Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Maychek, Sheridan District Wildlife Biologist. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about our 2023 proposed hunting seasons. So just briefly, Sheridan District is part of the Sheridan region, and our wildlife managers within this district include Jake Miller out of Dayton, game warden, Ryan Canada, also a game warden out of Sheridan. Our Buffalo game warden, that position is currently vacant, soon to be filled. Of course, myself, and then our wildlife coordinator, Tim Thomas, for the region, and the regional wildlife supervisor, Dustin Shorma. So let's jump in and talk about pronghorn briefly. So we have 4 different hunt areas that are within the Sheridan Biologist District. Area 109, it's Becton, and then areas 10, 15, and 16 that are the lighter pronghorn herd. So some of the metrics that we have for this herd include fawn ratio, buck ratio, and harvest. And our fawn ratio is down a little bit. This is a little bit less than what we'd like to see. We'd prefer to see that at 66 to 100. Average over the last few years has been 62 to 100. And we've had a little bit of drought the last couple years, also disease outbreak, hemorrhagic disease, and so it's contributed to some of those declines. Buck ratio looks pretty good at 50 to 100, and that's up over the last few year average. And harvest is down, and that's basically a reflection of cutting licenses prior year relative to the previous years. So satisfaction, that's kind of what we use to help drive our season strategy. And so satisfaction diminished over a few years and then actually started to come back up with hunters and still a little bit low with landowners. However, landowners are calling for a similar season strategy. So for lighter, our goals include increasing landowner and maintaining hunter satisfaction, increasing fawn ratios in the population, and reducing licenses in Hunt Area 15. And that's primarily because most of our comments that we received from landowners as well as from the public suggested decreasing licenses in Hunt Areas 15 rather than Hunt Areas 10 or 16. Becton, in Area 109, our fawn ratios are really good. Those are high and much higher than previous average. Buck ratio is good at 44 to 100, so we got plenty of bucks. And harvest, this is also down, again, as a bit of a reflection of cutting licenses relative to the prior years. And so our satisfaction with hunters, that had declined a bit over the last 5 years, started to climb back up. And with landowners, we're hoping to get a few more pronghorn as our numbers are down. And landowners asked for a similar season strategy to prior year. So for Becton pronghorn, our 2023 seasons, we essentially want to maintain landowner and hunter satisfaction. Those are good. Maintain those elevated fawn ratios as well as our population. And we are proposing no changes for this area. Mule deer and whitetail deer within the Sheridan district, those include hunt areas 24, 25, and those are part of the North Bighorn herd unit, which we share with the Cody region to the west, and also includes hunt areas 23 and 26, which is part of the Powder River herd. Some of the metrics that we have on mule deer, so our fawn ratios that we have, and this is primarily from hunt area 24, we don't count in hunt area 25. We're at 69 to 100. That's up from prior years. And then when we look at over into hunt area 23, 26, those fawn ratios are very good at 78 to 100. Our buck to doe ratios, those are those are good in both areas 24 as well as 23 and 26. However, our population estimates are below objective. Some of our concerns with both of these herds include population. In some places, most places, we have too few deer. However, some localized areas, we do have an excess of deer. We also have had a couple years of drought. We've had long-term habitat degradation, including invasive annual grasses, as well as degradation of shrubs that animals rely on for winter forage. CWD has been a concern more recently, and there has been some instances of damage, crop depredation. So our season strategy historically has been about a 2-week long season for antler deer with very limited doe fawn harvest that is typically targeted towards private lands. So doe fawn harvest has been under a little bit of scrutiny, and so we wanted to provide some information towards that and why it might actually be beneficial. So doe fawn harvest in hunt areas 24 as well as 23 and 26, numbers were not extremely high, and as an overall percentage of the population estimate is less than 3%. This is quite low. One of the interesting facts that we have from harvested animals is that the average age, particularly in hunt area 23, where we harvest the majority of does, is that the average age is about a year lower than hunt areas 24 or 26, where we harvest fewer does. And some of this seems to equate to a better productive herd, where we actually have an increasing fawn to doe ratio over the last 10 years in hunt area 23, where we've had substantial doe fawn harvest, versus hunt area 24, where the fawn to doe ratio has been relatively stable, and that ratio is actually decreasing in hunt area 26. Some of the other information that we have towards these animals, we've had a relatively severe winter thus far, or what many people consider to be a severe winter. This year, as part of a large statewide project, we collared approximately 100 fawns and 80 does in each of the 5 herds that are shown on both of these figures, and these are throughout the state. The main point being is that survival of juveniles has been very good this winter thus far, and is actually higher than the other 4 herds throughout the state. And doe survival has been exceptional. One of the other season strategies that we had employed the last 3 years was a 3-point restriction. And some of this was done potentially to increase survival of yearling males and increase the overall production of buck mule deer. So comparatively, I want to show kind of how this worked. So our 3-point or better season that we implemented, and that was in hunt area 25. So our yearling buck to doe ratio, and this would be counted in hunt area 24, which is presumably the winter range for animals from hunt area 25. So the 3 years prior to implementing that season, we actually had higher yearling buck to doe ratio than actually during the implementation of that. We would have expected the opposite. And if we look at areas 51 and 50, which have a very similar a very similar relationship on the west side of the Bighorns. It's a very similar pattern. Basically, there wasn't much change in yearling buck to doe ratio with no 3-point or better season. And then when we look at adult bucks, this is a similar pattern as well. We actually lost more adult bucks during that time period. We counted fewer once we had implemented this 3-point or better season in Area 25. And there is a similar pattern on the other side of the Bighorns where we did not implement this. So bottom line is it doesn't appear that the 3-point or better season increased the number of bucks. For whitetail deer, this season is largely driven by hunter satisfaction. So we like to try to understand both from hunter's perspective and landowner's perspective, how many deer did they see? What was the overall quality of their hunt? So for hunters, we're running at about 60% between these two areas, both areas 24, 25, as well as 23 and 26. And for landowners, we're seeing a lot of landowners, particularly in hunt area 24, who are saying they are at or above the desired levels of whitetail deer. Whereas east of I-90, hunt areas 23 and 26, landowners consider there to be right about the desired amount. Our population estimates are down from prior years. We equate this to an outbreak of hemorrhagic disease. And some of the big concerns include population. Again, it depends where you're at. It's either over or below objective, as well as damage and conflict, competition with mule deer, and more recently, chronic wasting disease. And our overall season strategy is a long duration and to maximize harvest. So to give you an idea of chronic wasting disease and where this is located and sort of the intensity of infection, the figure on the left shows where our samples were obtained 2020, 2022 in both mule deer, the darker gray, and whitetail deer, blue. So sampling distribution is relatively dispersed throughout hunt area 24. But when we look at where CWD was detected in sampled animals, there's a large concentration west and southwest of Sheridan. And so the concern being that there's quite a bit of overlap between mule deer and whitetail deer populations where CWD exists. So for North Bighorn deer, our 2023 seasons, our goals are to balance populations with the current conditions, habitat availability. We want to see an increase in fawn ratios and population, and we want to target damage and CWD hotspots where they occur. So essentially, there are no changes in hunt areas 24, with the exception of a reduction in type 7 licenses from 250 to 200, and then in area 25, removal of a 3-point or better antler restriction. And non-resident region Y quota of 1,200 will not change. For Powder River deer, similarly, we want to balance our populations with our available conditions, maintain those fawn ratios. This is definitely higher than east side of the Powder River, and we want to help increase that population towards objective. And again, we want to be able to target damage and CWD hotspots where they occur. So essentially no changes to this season, with the exception of hunt area 23, 26 type 7 license. These will be valid for doe or fawn deer on private land going from 1,000 to 300, and then the addition of a Type 8 license strictly for doe or fawn white-tailed deer on private land. For elk, the Sheridan District oversees hunt areas 37, 38, and also helps administer hunt area 29. For elk, we do like to look at hunter satisfaction. We also look at a trend count. So hunter satisfaction has been pretty good, not as much in hunt area 37 as in 38, and even into hunt area 129, satisfaction's been good. Landowner satisfaction, most landowners feel that populations are at or above desired levels, particularly in hunt areas 37 and 38. Our trend count in 37 and 38 this year was 2,715 elk. We are well above objective of 1,800, with no objective set in hunt area 129. Our primary concerns are overpopulation, hunting access, competition with mule deer, and more recently, chronic wasting disease. And our overall season strategy has been to maximize harvest. So for elk, just a brief overview of CWD and North Bighorn elk. Our prevalence in these animals 2018 to 2022 was 3.4%. 2020 to 2022, 7.7%. So we've seen it double. So this is a bit concerning. Most of our positives have come from areas 37, 36, and 35. So for 2023, our goal is to reduce populations to objective and maintain satisfaction. For areas 37 and 38, we are proposing no changes. Our goal for this year is to continue to work with landowners and secure access to help increase harvest. If we can increase access, then we may increase tags next year. In area 129, our only change was to increase type 6 tags from 650 to 850. Moose in the Bighorn Mountains, these are for hunt areas 1, 34, and 42. Some of the metrics that we use to help determine license allocation include our trend count. And so in hunt area 1, in 2022, we counted 89 moose. Our objective is 50. The herd as a whole, our objective is 110, and we counted 198. We were particularly high in counts in hunt area 42. Our bull to cow ratio is 37 to 100 in hunt area 1, which is a bit lower than what we'd like. But overall in the herd, we are at 75 to 100. Again, this is largely driven in hunt area 42. Our average male age of those animals harvested for the last 3 years has been 5.3 years with an objective of 5. And at herd level, we are also at and exceeding that. So we have good age structure with those animals that are being harvested. Our primary concerns are overpopulation. We also have degraded willow habitat. And in some instances, particularly early season, there's over accessibility of moose right off of main roads. Our season strategy is to maintain bull harvest and increase cow harvest. So for 2023, in hunt area 1, we propose to move the archery dates from September 1st to September 15th, And this is an effort to reduce some of the accessibility to animals that are typically extremely visible off main roads. But we will also increase quotas of both our Type 1 and Type 4 licenses, allowing opportunity for both residents and non-residents. For upland birds, there will be some changes this season. For wild turkey, our fall season will see an increase in licenses as we're seeing an increase in birds, particularly along the face of the Bighorn Mountains. Our spring 2024 season has no proposed changes. For sage grouse, hunt area 4, we are seeing a decline in the number of birds on our leks, particularly the peak number of males on our leks during counts in the spring. So the figure on the left shows hunt area 4. The figure on the right shows our peak male attendance, or actually the change in the peak male attendance from 2010, 2012 versus 2019 to 2021. So essentially, the darker the colors, the greater the decrease in the number of peak males that we observed on those leks. So because we are seeing so few birds on leks, and they do not seem to be rebounding over the last 10 years, we are proposing to close the sage grouse season in hunt area 4. However, the remainder of our upland birds, those seasons will remain unchanged. And for pheasant, those seasons will also remain unchanged in hunt area 1. And as a reminder, the Bud Love Habitat Management Area Youth Pheasant Hunt will be Saturday, November 18th. And lastly, for small game, for 2023, we will see no changes in these seasons. These will run from September 1st through March 31st, 2023. With that, I thank you for your interest in our 2023 Sheridan District hunting seasons, and you're welcome to contact us with questions about these seasons or wildlife. Thank you.